Hi, I'm Andy Rockmore, and I'm here discussing the upcoming AIA Colorado Design Conference with Matthew Hufft, Hufft Projects. Matthew will be presenting his work and the work that Hufft Projects does on Thursday afternoon. One of the interesting aspects of this year's conference is that we've meshed together both the practice sessions and the design sessions. We've done that because we think that it's really impossible to separate the two. So not only are we interested in having architects show off the great work they do, but also talk about the process of how they do what they do. So Matthew, we're encouraged that your program brief suggests that you'll do just that, focus on your process. So with that, why don't you tell us a little bit about how your firm is set up and just a brief introduction of some of the things that you guys do.
Sure, yeah. We are what we like to call a design collective. We're about 30 people, I think 32 people. That is everything from architects to graphic designers, interior designers, industrial designers, wood craftsmen, metal craftsmen, digital craftsmen, and contractors are people with degrees in construction management. So we work in a fairly unique way on a lot of different projects. We work in a fairly traditional way on other projects. Half our work is high-end residential, the other half is commercial. On the commercial side, most of our work has a residential component. It's multifamily. We also do some tenant finish and retail type stuff as well. My lecture is going to be talking a lot about our process and how we integrate the different people into the collective and how that process evolves throughout a typical project. And also we'll talk about our history. We're only 8.5 years old, so we've grown from 0 to 30 people in that amount of time. Actually, most of that happened in the first half of that 8.5 years, 4 or 5 years. So we'll talk a little bit about the process of how we got to where we are.
That's great. Can you give us just a little bit more about how when you got to starting? I think you said 8.5 years ago. Where were you before, and what brought you to start your own firm rather than joining maybe another one?
We started the firm in New York City. We still have one person in New York. We do a small amount of work on the East Coast. We migrated to Kansas City about 7 years ago, just because we really saw the Midwest as a land of opportunity, lots of space, cheap rent, and I think the Midwest in general is kind of coming of age when it comes to design, and there's lots of opportunities to do what we like to do, and that's really practice architecture and with a modern sensibility.
Well, can you say some more, Matthew, about the design build approach, about fabricating and making some of the different assemblies in your projects? How did that come about, and what have been some of the lessons learned or some of the unique aspects of that?
Lots of lessons learned, some good, some bad. Our success rate is not 100%, I can tell you that, but through every trial and tribulation, you get better and stronger, and I think it's one of the reasons we do it, is we like to learn how to do things, and a lot of what we do is from a furniture design standpoint, from a fixture design standpoint, is very custom and therefore requires an R&D component to it, and having those capabilities in-house allows us to, I believe, take things a step further. Or at least in an easier way. And why do we do it? We started doing it about 2 or 3 years into the company's formation. We started out just doing architecture, and as we grew, we started to take on different craftsmen. And the reason we did is actually goes back even further than the company's formation. We when I graduated college, I was given an opportunity to design something for my dad, and it was literally, I graduated in May, and in June he wanted me to start a little cabin project, very modest little cabin, But I, like any graduate coming out of college, knew nothing, at least when it comes to architecture, really. I mean, of course, I had the background that you're given in a typical architectural education, but in my opinion, the architecture is all about experience, and years of experience and trying to kind of learn the ropes. And so, like any other newbie, I didn't know much, and I ended up working with an Amish crew to design and build this little cabin. And through that experience, I learned a lot about how to collaborate with people like Amish, who are excellent wood craftsmen, and how to frame a house and all these things. And I actually built the house with this little cabin with them. And then I was given another commission, which was a more elaborate house, and through that, it had more elaborate designs. And I learned I still didn't know what I needed to know, so I ended up kind of honing in with, a cabinet maker and a metal craftsman, and a great contractor, and then a plumber, and I ended up becoming really good friends with all of the people, all the trades on that project, and those became my mentors, which I think was a little atypical for most architects. Most architects go into an architecture office and then get a typical mentor and go through the typical, IDP process. I didn't. I ended up actually learning from the different trades in my residential work, because I had no choice. I really didn't know how to detail the stuff, and so these people were gracious enough to teach me it. And so through that, and I don't think I realized what I was doing when I did it, but I think through that process, I became somewhat kind of dependent on having them around me to do different detailing and kind of, to express different things in wood and metal that we wanted to. And so when the opportunity arose to bring a metalsmith into our office, I jumped on the chance and brought them in. And initially, I thought I was bringing them in from a business opportunity, but what actually it's evolved into is this design collective. And I think what I didn't realize is I was actually bringing them in to help support our design staff, and that's exactly what happens now. And I'll talk about this in my lecture and kind of show a graph of how our interaction works when we do fabrication on projects and when we bring people in. But we've got a fairly set protocol of when the metal craftsman enters a project, if they need to enter a project, and when the wood craftsman enters, and if we're going to build it, when they enter, and when we price and how we price it, and all of that. It's a fairly formulaic thing we've developed.
Well, did that, when you put all these people together, or at least started, did that influence the type of work that you went after? In other words, did you feel like residential work was maybe allowed more craftsmanship rather than commercial, or did it just happen concurrently or with less intention?
There's been no business plan or planning on our end whatsoever. Things have just happened, mostly for the better. But I think just based on what's allowed from a budget standpoint and from a craft standpoint, high-end residential really has the best opportunity for what we do on the fabricate and construction side. However, what happens and what has happened is as we've grown, we start to take on larger and larger commercial projects. We found that we can still tap into our resources in our shop and still do things, whether it be building or fabricating a lobby, or using our metal craftsmen to help us figure out some detailings for a brise-soleil or a trellis that we're not capable of fabricating. It's too large scale or not local or whatever. But they are attuned with the differences between an 1/8-inch wall thickness or a 16th-inch wall thickness on an aluminum tube, something that our architects aren't.
Right. Has this affected? You said that it was fairly formulaic how it all works out, and that it's systematized, I guess, through the design process. Does it change your fee structure? Is it pervasive throughout the entire process, even throughout construction, so that clients, when measuring Hufft projects versus someone else, need to really consider apples and oranges?
Yes, it is. It is pervasive through the work that we're involved in. It's just all of our high-end residential work. It is our commercial work. Some. It just kind of depends. I think we've worked out a way that our typical fee is comparative or competitive to most. It's just a different way of working, and that's been a challenge for us that we've just recently learned how to communicate with our clients. We have a manager that works on the project from start to finish, so they've always got a consistent person that's there all the time. But what happens is other people dart in and dart out of meetings at different points along the timeline of the process, and that's unusual, I think, and I think makes some clients a little uncomfortable that there's so many people touching their projects. Mm-hmm. But we found that as long as we keep one person there consistently all the time, and we are upfront with our clients about how that process is going to be, it tends to work out.
Great. Well, Matthew, thank you very much for your time. We look forward to seeing you on Thursday at the conference, Thursday afternoon. Matthew Hufft of Hufft Projects. Thanks.
Thanks, Andy. Thank you. Look forward to it.